The 8th of November by Big and Rich. Released on November 15th, 2005 on the album Come Into Your City. Big and Rich, two country showmen, were initially shunned by the Nashville mainstream, but eventually became the face of the music city as the 2000s drew to a close. Big and Rich were the most unlikely country success story of the new millennium. They didn't appear from nowhere, but when Horse of a Different Color exploded in 2004, it sure seemed like they did. The eclectic duo pushed hip-hop styles into their rocking country, building their music on chant-along sports anthems and ballads, showcasing both their humor and sentimentality. Soon after, Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy became a smash hit, Big and Rich started firing out successes, not just as performers, but as writers and producers, turning Gretchen Wilson into a star, assisting in John Anderson's comeback, and supporting novelties like country rapper Cowboy Troy. If Big and Rich seemed like an unlikely match, it's because they came from quite different backgrounds. Rich taking the traditional Music City path via Lone Star, and Big Kenny Alfin working as a pro songwriter, dabbling in both country and rock. They teamed up in 1998 with their group called the Music Mafia, which appeared at a Nashville club on a regular basis for several years. Big and Rich worked on new material both as a team and separately, building a reputation that started to crest in 2003 when Martina McBride recorded it there, She's a Butterfly. Soon, the duo signed with Warner Nashville, which released their first single, Wild West Show, early in 2004 with the full-length Horse of a Different Color appearing that spring. Thanks to the near-novelty Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy, a boisterous blend of rock and country and old-school rap, the album turned into something of a phenomenon, and Big and Rich were ready to seize this opportunity, pushing themselves and their music mafia. The first out the gate was Gretchen Wilson, whose 2004 debut, Here for the Party, was produced by Rich, who also wrote many of the songs, including its hit, Redneck Women. The group's country rapper comrade, Cowboy Troy, was next in line, releasing his debut in 2005. By the time Big and Rich released their sophomore album, Come Into Your City, in time for the holiday season of 2005, they were dominating country music, with Rich in particular popping up all over the place, producing John Anderson's comeback and judging Nashville's star. Come Into Your City went into the top 10 and had several hits. The group's momentum didn't slow until 2007, when their third album, Between Raising Hell and Amazing Grace, performed only respectably. Big and Rich decided to devote 2009 to solo projects, with Rich's Son of a Preacher Man appearing in the spring and Kenny's Quiet Times of a Rock and Roll Farm Boy in the fall, followed by a hits collection of the group's first 3 albums. The duo reunited in 2012 as Big and Rich for their 4th studio album, Hillbilly Jedi, which featured a pair of songs co-written with John Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora. Bon Jovi was also instrumental in getting clearance from George Lucas to use the term Jedi in the album title. A song that I found particularly interesting by Big and Rich was The 8th of November. The 8th of November is about Operation Hump on the 8th of November in 1965 during the Vietnam War. Operation Hump was a search and destroy operation by the 173rd Airborne Brigade in an area about 18 miles north of Bien Hoa. The objective was to drive out Viet Cong fighters who had taken position in several key hills. Little contact was made prior when B and C Company settled into a night defensive position southeast of Hill 65, a triple canopied jungled hill. At about 6 in the morning of November 8th, C Company began a move northwest toward Hill 65, while B Company moved northeast towards Hill 78. Shortly before 8 o'clock in the morning, C Company was engaged by a sizable enemy force well dug into the southern face of Hill 65, armed with machine guns and shotguns. At 8:45, B Company was directed to wheel in place and proceed toward Hill 65 with the intention of relieving C Company, often relying on their bayonets to repel daring close-range attacks by small bands of masked Viet Cong fighters. B Company reached the foot of Hill 65 at about 9:30 and moved up the hill. It became obvious that there was a large enemy force in place on the hill. C Company was getting hammered, and by chance, B Company was forcing the enemy's right flank. Under pressure from that flanking attack, the enemy force moved to the northwest. The shells ended up scorching the foliage and causing many rebels to catch on fire and exploded their ammunition and grenades that they carried. B Company halted in place to try to locate and consolidate with C Company, managing to establish a defensive line running around the hilltop from southeast to northwest, but with little cover on the southern side. Meanwhile, the Viet Cong commander realized that his best chance was to close with the U.S. forces so that their 173rd air and artillery fire could not be effectively employed. The Viet Cong troops attempted to outflank the U.S. position atop the hill from both the east and the southwest, moving his troops closer to the Americans. The result ended up being shoulder-to-shoulder attacks up the hillside, hand-to-hand fighting, and isolation of parts of B and C companies. The Americans held up against 2 such attacks. Although the fighting continued after the second massed attack, it reduced in intensity as the troops tried to disengage and withdraw, scattering into the jungle to throw off the trail of pursuing U.S. snipers. By late afternoon, it seemed that contact had been broken off, and the 2 companies were allowed to prepare a night defensive position while collecting their dead and wounded in the center of the position. Although a few of the most seriously wounded were extracted by U.S. Air Force helicopters, the triple canopy jungle prevented the majority from being evacuated until the morning of November 9th. The result of the battle was heavy losses on both sides. 48 paratroopers dead, many wounded, and 403 dead Viet Cong troops. The introduction to the song The 8th of November by Big and Rich is read by Chris Christopherson. It reads, On November 8, 1965, the 173rd Airborne Brigade on Operation Hump, War Zone D in Vietnam, were ambushed by over 1,200 VC. 48 American soldiers lost their lives that day. Severely wounded and risking his own life, Lawrence Joel, a medic, was the first living black man since the Spanish-American War to receive the United States Medal of Honor for saving so many lives in the midst of battle that day. Our friend, Niles Harris, retired 25 years, U.S. Army, the guy who gave Big Kenny his top hat, was one of the wounded who lived. This song is his story. Caught in the action of to kill or be killed, greater love hath no man than to lay down his life for a friend. The final sentence is a reference to John 15:13 in the Bible.
Said goodbye to his mama as he left South Dakota to fight for the red, white, and blue. He was 19 and green with a new M16, just doing what he had to do. He was dropped in the jungle where the choppers would rumble with the smell of napalm in the air. Then the sergeant said, look up ahead. Like a dark evil cloud, 1,200 came down on him and 29 more. They fought for their lives, but most of them died in the 173rd Airborne. On the 8th of November, the angels were crying as they carried his brothers away. With the fire raining down and the hell all around, there were few men left standing that day. Saw the eagle fly through a clear blue sky. 1965, the 8th of November. 58 and his ponytail's gray, but the battle's still blazing in his head. He limps when he walks, but he's strong when he talks about the shrapnel that left in his leg. He puts on a gray suit over his airborne tattoo, and he ties it on one time a year, and remembers the fallen as he orders a tall one and swallows it down with his tears. On the 8th of November, the angels were crying as they carried his brothers away. With the fire raining down and the hell all around, there were few men left standing that day. Saw the eagle fly through a clear blue sky, 1965, the 8th of November. Saw the eagle fly through a clear blue sky, 1965. On the 8th of November, the angels were crying as they carried his brothers away. With the fire raining down and the hell all around, there were few men left standing that day. On the 8th of November, the angels were crying as they carried his brothers away. With the fire raining down and the hell all around, there were few men left standing that day. Saw the eagle fly through a clear blue sky, 1965, the 8th of November. As he left South Dakota to fight for the red, white, and blue. He was 19 and green with a new M16, just doing what he had to do.
The most interesting part about this research that I've done is really the fact that Big and Rich met Niles Harris by chance. They were out at the Buffalo bar, and they got along pretty well. And then they just Niles recalls that he took Big and Rich out to some abandoned gold mines in the Black Hills and enjoyed their time together. And while they were talking, he told them the story of the battle that he was in Vietnam. And this is where they got their inspiration from to write the 8th of November. And I think that's really interesting because it's a part of something that you don't hear very often. You don't hear people talk about war stories very often because they're very difficult to tell often. I mean, they do, but something like that, it was so horrendous and horrific and horrifying to deal with. Hearing that from the source and being able to make a song from that is incredible to me. And when I was looking at the lyrics, it really does tells Niles' story completely. I mean, he said goodbye to his parents, his mother. He left South Dakota. He was 19 and just doing what he had to do. And I like that line a lot, just doing what he had to do, because it was something that Vietnam was a very difficult war because a lot of people didn't really know what was going on. The government was hiding it from America. They were trying to hide the fact that we weren't really winning, and he was just kind of doing what he had to do. And a lot of the soldiers in that war weren't really respected. They weren't cared about because people didn't even want to be in this war, but yet he did what he had to do. He left and went to the army, and it's always an honorable thing, and it's very hard in a war where being a soldier isn't honorable when you think it's right. And like a dark evil cloud, 1,200 came down on him and 29 more. So like this insane amount of people coming down on this small group, and they fighting for their lives, but a ton of them dying. And then talking about how now he's 58, his ponytail's gray, he's old, but the battle still plays in his head. The fact that he's never going to forget this battle, it's never going to go away for him. He still limps, he's still wounded from it. He has this airborne tattoo. It means a lot to him if he gets it tattooed on his skin. This is very important to him. And remembers the fallen as he orders a tall one and swallows it down with his tears. Drinking just to forget about everything from that day, I'm sure. It's incredible to me and so terribly sad. And the angels were crying as they carried his brothers away. All of his friends, his comrades, they all died. Fire raining down when the foliage caught fire. Hell all around. There were few men left standing that day. Not a lot of people survived. So I think that this song really portrays what we don't get to hear about a lot. We don't get to hear the battle songs about battles and the story told through this, and to hear the background information about how horrifying it was and how people were fighting face to face and with bayonets, and it was bloodshed, tears, and it was an experience that is going to scar those people, the people that were involved, for a long time. And I think that that's what makes this song really unique and why I really like it. Thank you.